Hey everybody, welcome to today's video. As always, it is awesome to see you. I'm so glad that you are here today and tuning in. Let's see, 2 weeks ago I released a video called Magic in Music, and I'm going to link it up here. If you haven't seen it, I invite you to take a look whenever you get a chance. It's not necessary for today's video, but there were a couple of things that I mentioned in that video. The first, for those who did see it, is that I never did hear back from Q. So I'm going to assume that he was taken care of, that he found somebody else that better fit the bill. The second thing is actually the purpose of this video today, which is to share one of my favorite magical moments in music. A small miracle, you know, that tends to happen from time to time between musicians when everything just kind of lines up and syncs together. It's absolutely fantastic. So we have to go back in time a bit to the year 2001. I had the pleasure of going on a trip to the Middle East. It was a long trip, about 3 weeks. Spent about a week in Syria, a week in Jordan, and a week in Israel. Our tour guide was my professor at the time, who happened to be an archaeologist, and he had lived over in those parts and knew that area very well, so we were in good hands. One day we found ourselves in the middle of freaking nowhere in Palmyra, Syria. We had spent the day looking at all of the ruins and the sites, museums, had an awesome lunch, had just eaten dinner, sitting in the hotel, thinking that we were done and going to hunker down for the night, when my professor came to us and said that we had been extended an invitation by the local Bedouin tribe to go and to have an evening of celebration, an evening of cultures for like 2 to 3 hours or something like that. And I remember leaning over to my friend at the time and said, "What's a Bedouin?" And he smiled at me and he said, "Desert gypsies." So here I am thinking to myself, okay, I am thousands of miles away from my home in Texas. I am in the middle of nowhere in a desert region in Syria, and I have just been invited to go party with some gypsies. What could possibly go wrong? And then on top of that, my professor said, "Now, I'm not going to be going, but if you wanted to go, it should be just fine." So, hey, you know, I like a sense of adventure, so there was a group of us that did manage to go. We piled into our bus, we drove to the outskirts of town, and pulled up to this really large tent. And the Bedouins were gathered outside. And I'll be honest and say there was a little bit of a tense moment there, you know, kind of entrusting ourselves. As we were walking out of the bus, they were all there and they were chanting, "USA, USA, USA." And it immediately put us at ease, it made us feel welcome, and kind of made us feel at home. I had learned when I was over there that there's no greater hospitality than that found of the Bedouins or desert nomads in general. And this is a hospitality code that dates back thousands of years. And the reason for it is they rely on one another for survival. So they have to be hospitable to each other. Kind of like the sound of that. Anyway, one of the things that I had learned is that if you were to go to the home tent of a Bedouin, that they would take you in and they would treat you like family. And it would only be on the third day when they would ask you why it is that you were there. Wow. So we gathered into the tent. The tent was made out of like goat skin, goat hair, pretty primitive. And the flooring wasn't sand, but there were ornate rugs all over on the ground. And then there on the inside, or I should say on the inside of the tent, on the outer parameter of it, were cushions. And they invited us to have a seat on the cushions, to lay down, to sit, prop ourselves up, whatever. There were hookahs located throughout. If you don't know what a hookah is, it's a water pipe, and these were massive. They were like 2 to 3 feet tall. And for those who are curious, it was a fruit-flavored tobacco. They did offer us also some local beer and wine. And so while they were getting us all set up, the band came to the center and they started to play. Now, my memory is a little fuzzy on the instrument makeup, but I'm pretty sure that I remember a single string instrument called a rababa that is bowed. I believe that there was an oud, which is a lyre type instrument, kind of like a guitar. I distinctly remember there being some kind of flute or recorder, some type of woodwind instrument. And then there was, a couple hand drums or two. And while they were playing, then all of a sudden, 2 ladies came out in some dance get-up that they had. But here's the thing, they had their hair down, and we could see their faces. Now, we're smack dab in the middle of Muslim territory. And while we were in Syria and even in parts of Jordan, they were completely covered. So we didn't get to see too many faces. But we were in their home, and they let their hair down, and they let us see their faces. And that was a real gift. That was a true gift to us. That was really cool. So they started dancing and getting others to dance as well. So, here we are. We're smoking, we're drinking, we're listening to the music. We're watching the dancers. All of us are having a great time. Time goes by, and a couple drinks go by, and next thing you know, I'm kind of tapping along to the rhythm of the band on my leg. And one of the Bedouins just happened to notice it. And he came up to me, and he pulled me up, and he brought me to the center of the tent with the band. They got me a chair, and they gave me one of these drums, and they sat me down to play. Now, I'm not exactly sure what their expectation was outside of maybe they were just doing it as a chuckle. Here's a guy who was tapping along. Let's put him in the band for a little bit and see what happens. Maybe just to appease me, if anything else. What they probably weren't expecting is that I'm a percussionist. And so I started to play along with them. And I started to play in time. And not only that, but then I started to bring in more than likely the rhythms that they had not were not familiar with from the West. And their eyes got really wide, and they smiled big, and they were so excited about this. And we had a great time of playing a song. But then this is where the magic started to happen. Went into another tune, and I wish I could adequately put it into words, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to, but we just started to sync, all right? And we got attuned to one another, and it got to the point where I anticipated their rests. When they stopped in the music, I stopped. When they went back into it, I went back into it, and it was all just by feel. And they were looking at me like, oh my gosh, has he heard this tune before or something? Does he know the song? No. Not at all. Had never heard that style of music before, never had heard that tune, had never even played that instrument or with those musicians, and yet something like that happens. And it really is like a small miracle when that takes place. It has less to do with talent and has everything to do more with a spiritual element that is found in music. It's one of the reasons why musicians can get together from all over the world and they can play with one another and they can jibe because music truly is the universal language. So once we got done with that and that was all cool and everybody was applauding, the band started getting up and I got up with them thinking that they were going to take their break and I was going to go back to my beer and my pipe. And the drummer came up and he stopped me and he motioned for me to sit back down. So I sat back down, and they brought a chair over for him and another drum. So it was just the two of us in the middle of the tent, and he wanted to drum with me. And so we started playing, and it ended up being kind of this drum-off type thing. And here I am competing with this guy who had likely grown up with this instrument, and I was just doing my best to tag along. And the tour group, they assured me after the fact that I held my own. So hey, I will take that. They said that I made them proud, so I evidently represented well. So what a great memory. A couple days after that, we found ourselves in Jericho in Jordan, and we went to the shop there, and lo and behold, I happened to find this. Yes, it is one of the drums, just like the one I played in the tent. It's not a souvenir, it's a real traditional drum. I don't know if you can see the outside of it, but that is a wooden veneer. The drum itself is made of metal, and then they adhere this wooden veneer to the outside. On the top is this head, and I asked about it, and it's made out of fish skin. So it's a single ply head. It's really actually pretty tight. This drum, when I was in the tent, I asked what kind of drum this was. What was the name of it? And they said it was called a tambour. That's what they called it. I've learned that the same drum can be called different things depending on region and country. So there they knew it as a tambour. Other places call it a darbuka, and then yet other places would call it a doumbek. Either way, it plays the same. I still don't know how to play it. It's definitely become one of my most cherished possessions, though, for obvious reasons. So I thought in close of today's video that I would tap around on a little bit so you can at least hear what it sounds like. And as always, thank you for being here if you're still tuned into this. And I hope you take care of yourself, take care of one another, and as always, light and love to you all. There we go. See you next time. Bye.